Hello there. My name is Olatunji Shobodu, and it's my pleasure to join you once again today on leadership. From false leaders, learning from false leaders. Um, some technical issues from my side here. I wasn't too sure if I was live yet. Some things I ought to be seeing on my screen, but I haven't, I wasn't seeing it. So today, we're discussing learning from false leaders, learning from false leaders. And what do we mean, learning from false leaders? There are people we will call false leaders, and we'll call them false leaders because they are like impersonators. Okay. They are leaders, but they are not doing what leaders ought to be doing. um, I think, in a sense, the Bible, refers to them as wolves in sheep clothing. Wolves in sheep clothing. They are people who have a different agenda, who are deceitful, who make you believe that they have your interest at heart, whereas all they are doing is to pursue their own interest. Okay, those are false leaders. And the example of false leaders, in fact, perhaps the clearest example of false leaders you would find in the Bible were this set of people that Jesus always had issues with: the Pharisees, the Sadducees. In fact, some were even called, uh, the like the disciples of Herod, if you like. But what was particular or peculiar to this group, it is that they were hypocrites. They were hypocrites. Jesus made it clear, and he called them so to their faces. He said, "You hypocrites, you hypocrites." He said it repeatedly. They didn't like it, you know, but every time they proved that that's who they were by the things that they did. All right. So you would say, how do you learn from hypocrites? How do you learn from false leaders? Now, let me say right away that perhaps the greatest trap that confronts many leaders, and the one that leaders typically fall into, is the trap of hypocrisy. The trap of hypocrisy. And it's easy for a leader to fall into it. And who are these hypocrite leaders? And why would you want to learn from them? Now, one of the most peculiar things about hypocrite leaders is that their agenda is different from what they profess. They say one thing, and they say the truth more times than not, but they do something else, and they are going after something else. They want you to accept them as leaders, but they have no intention of doing leadership. They want you to regard them as credible leaders, but they don't do what credible leaders do, and they have no intention of doing so. They are deceptive. They like to show you as though there is a credible, authentic side to them, but it's all gimmickry. They are going after something else. They're going after something else. And if you look around you, you would find quite a handful of leaders like that. So if you have leaders like that, what's there to learn? Is that something we would want to learn? Can that be something that will make someone else into a leader, a good leader? Well, Jesus didn't write them off completely. He said to his people, he said, look, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. He said, beware, be careful. I mean, if you must beware of something, you must take note of it first. You must be able to recognize it for you to be careful about it or with it or around it, which was what he was saying to them. He said, be careful, beware, take heed of the leaven of the Pharisees. You find that in Matthew 16 and verse 6. And by the way, while we're at it, my name is Atunji Shobodu. I'm sure you know that by now, all right? And we are speaking to the subject, learning from false leaders. So if you look at it, Matthew 16 and verse 6, then Jesus said unto them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. I like the way, Bishop Benson, it also used to pronounce it, the Sadducees. All right, this group said, be careful with them. To be careful with them, to be careful around them, to be careful about what they say. You have to listen to what they say. You have to be able to identify them. All right? And what he was saying isn't that you should disregard or discountenance what they say. Don't discountenance what they say. Notice who they are. They are not ignorant. The Pharisees are not ignorant. The Sadducees were not ignorant. They were known in their days as teachers of the law. They knew the letter of the word. They knew what was written where. They were masters in terms of knowledge. So when they speak, you have to pay attention, because the chances are they are speaking what is written. They are custodians of knowledge. Their understanding of the knowledge is a different thing. And whether or not they uphold or they live their lives by that knowledge is where the problem is. Is where the problem is. So there are at least two things to learn from these false leaders. The first is that the theory of leadership, you can learn from that. All right? You can learn from that. They are knowledgeable people. So when they speak, pay attention to what they say. You can learn from them. What makes them false is not the knowledge they have. Their knowledge is credible. What makes them false is that they act contrary to the knowledge that they possess. Where the problem is their understanding of the knowledge they possess. That's why it's often said they understand the letter of the word, the letter of knowledge, but the spirit of it, they miss out on it. They miss out on it. That's why they would insist, for example, that it is not right to do good to anyone on the Sabbath. Although they will do good to their own animals. Like Jesus will say to them, so if your animal fell into a ditch on the Sabbath, won't you bring the animal out? But you are looking at an able-bodied person like you, and you are saying that that person should not be healed, or the person's problem should not be solved on the Sabbath day. So it should come on another day. Now, the truth is that nobody is supposed to do anything on the Sabbath. If you look at the knowledge, from a knowledge standpoint, they would appear to be right. From an understanding standpoint, they got it all mixed up. That's why Jesus told them at a point. He said, you see, the problem with you guys is that you don't know the word. He wasn't talking about knowledge. He was talking about understanding. He said, you don't know the scriptures. You err. You fall into error because you don't have that understanding of what the knowledge, the raw knowledge you have. You don't have the understanding. And so you are unable to experience the power of that knowledge. You don't know and you can't experience the power. You don't have the understanding. So when they speak, they have the knowledge. You can learn the knowledge from them. In today's contemporary leadership environment, that some of your leaders know what they are talking about. They have the raw knowledge of what they are talking about. What they say is correct. So to ignore them, to disregard them, is attempting to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's why Jesus was saying to them, there's an interpretation where Jesus said, don't do what these guys do, but pay attention to what they say. All right? So you do what they say, don't do what they do. Why? Because they don't do what they say. That's the hypocrisy. It's one dimension of the hypocrisy. So you have stuff to learn from that. Let's be clear about that. You have stuff. Your leader may not be great, but your leader can be knowledgeable. If your leader is knowledgeable, pay attention to the knowledge. Gain from the knowledge. You can gain from the knowledge. Don't completely disregard what he or she is saying. You may not agree with their conduct, with whether or not they live up to what they say. But it doesn't mean that what they are saying is wrong. You know, it's important. This counsel is very important. Because we have a tendency to write off our leaders as though there is nothing to be learned from them. So even the worst leaders who have knowledge, you can learn from them. Beware of what these guys teach, because what do they teach? It's not only what they speak. What they do about what they speak is what they teach in reality. If I say something and I make a demand of you that this is how to act, this is how to get this thing done, part of what you will be looking out for from me is whether or not I do the same thing. in the same situation or in a similar situation. So you really learn from me if I do what I say. The second part of the point, what you can learn, is that very act of hypocrisy is a lesson. So you can learn from these false leaders that very important fact that they don't do what they say. And that's not for you to copy. That's for you to refrain from. I mean, why would somebody say what is right and not do it? Other than the fact that the person has a different agenda. Other than the fact that the person is out to deceive. Is out to deceive. And that's the problem that they have. I think that, in fact, if they had a sincere heart, they would ultimately come to build the right understanding, of the knowledge that they have. But they are of the group that the Bible talks about, saying that these people, they praise me with their mouth, but their hearts are far away from me. They have a different agenda. This is all about deceit. Hypocrisy is deceit. The false leaders are deceitful. The people who want to project themselves as credible, they are deliberate. They put on sheep's clothing, but they are wolves. The idea is to believe that they are sheep when they are in fact wolves at their core, and to treat them as sheep until they strike as who they truly are. So, two things that you can learn from false teachers, from the so-called false teachers. The Bible tells you by their fruit you will know them. What is their fruit? It's the product of what they do. And the product will be different from the product that what they say promises. All right? So you can know that, gentlemen, you are not doing what you are saying. Because if you are doing what you are saying, these results are not the results that you will produce. They are not the results that you will produce. So let's be careful. Let's be careful. There are false leaders, it is true. They say something, they do something else, they demand something from their people that they do not do, even though what they demand is correct. That's another thing. They want you to live by the books, but they have no intention of living by the books. But that's fine, because you living by the books is advantageous, is what the book says. All right? Provided, of course, that you are not hung up on the letter of the book, but you understand the spirit of the book. So you would not refrain from helping somebody on a rest day, on the Sabbath in their own case. You would help because you know that the intent of that law wasn't that you shouldn't help somebody. All right. If somebody is in distress and is on the Sabbath, you must help. All right. Because there is the command that you should love one another. And if you are to love one another, you can't see somebody who has a challenge and you say, because, well, today is Sabbath, please come on Monday. All right. So that's what we're talking about. Beware of the teaching, of the doctrine, of the leaven of the Pharisees. Because if you do not beware, if you get trapped in what they do, you are going to turn out like them. There's something tricky about interacting with these fellows and about taking the counsel that Jesus gave. On the one hand, you don't want to behave like them. Because if you do what they do, you will be like them. Pharisee leaders will produce, hypocrites as successor leaders. Why? A good tree would only produce a good fruit, and vice versa. There is no way a bad tree will produce good fruit. So you have to beware. But you also have to beware that you don't rubbish them completely, including what they say. Why? Because they are knowledgeable. Because they say the right thing. They say what is written. When they speak, you can confirm that what they have said is correct, is factually correct. It may not be the truth, but it's factually correct. So don't throw it out. You embrace it. And then you search for the truth of it. And then live according to the truth of it. So you take what is good from them and you do away with what is bad from them. That's how it is. That's the import of the counsel that Jesus gave. That's the import of the counsel that Jesus gave. That's the import of the counsel that Jesus gave. So I'm going to close by saying to you, the greatest challenge that a leader has is being and remaining authentic. What does it mean? It is living true to what you say as a leader. And living true to what you say, there are different dimensions of it. I hope to speak about that, sometime later. All right? But it's a trap that the average leader tends to fall into. And when you are not authentic, once you veer into the realm of error of hypocrisy, that's it. The credibility to lead will be lost. You will struggle to find committed following. And it weakens your ability to deliver on your leadership mandate. So, you can learn from false leaders. It's true that there are wolves in sheep clothing, but even wolves have some positive signs, which you take note of. But the behavioral side, you run away from. And the trick to avoid falling into the ditches that they fall into is to seek understanding. You may not be able to get the understanding from them because their understanding is warped. They run with the letter. They have no access to the spirit of what they are trying to comply with. All right? And so you go after understanding, available through different sources. And so you avoid the mistakes that they make. Your sincerity of heart is expressed, and you turn out differently from the way that they have turned out. That's it for this week. We've been on leadership in 30 minutes. My name is Olatunji Shobodu, and we've been speaking today on the subject learning from false leaders. You can learn from false leaders, and we've pointed out what exactly you can learn from that. What exactly you can learn from that. So, like I said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you have gained anything today, please express yourself in the comment. Let's have comments from you. I love to have feedback. Don't forget, share with your friends, your colleagues, those you believe need to hear the kinds of things that we discuss on leadership in 30 minutes. And don't forget to subscribe if you have not yet subscribed, so that you can get notification when these sessions are coming up. And our sessions are leadership in 30 minutes every Thursday, 11 a.m. West African time. And then you can join me very briefly on Monday for some leadership nugget, that will help your week. And that's on Leadership Monday. It's also every Monday, 11 a.m. West African time. And it's my pleasure to discuss the subject of leadership. The world needs credible leaders, leaders after the heart of God, especially leaders who undertake their assignment based on the principles of truth, the principles of God. That's what we bring to the table in our discussion of leadership. And that's our confidence that they work. That's our confidence that they work. Once again, Olatunji Shobodu is my name, CEO and founder, Emet Leadership Academy. And you may want to join our Profit from Parables Bootcamp. You'll see it on the screen. Check out the page, and see what the program has to offer. You want to renew your mind, change the way you think, so that everything else about you, your results, can change. That's one program you need to get onto. The next diet of it takes off on the 1st of April. I look forward to seeing you there. I look forward to seeing you there. It promises to be, a great time of discovery, a great time of adventure in the Word, of God, with a particular reference, to life, situational, day-to-day, contemporary application. All right, enjoy what remains of your week. God bless you. And thank you for listening. Bye-bye.